Welcome to Things Men Don't Tell. I'm Father Michael Orr. This show is sponsored by Dominion Family Services, a 501c3 agency in southeastern Michigan. Dominion Family Services' purpose is to help men better engage in family and community life by working with them to create healthy relationships in their families, both with their intimate partners, with their children, and with the society around them. Today, my guest again is Ms. Shirley Williams, who is the founder of On the Wings of Love. Now, if you saw my part one show, we were discussing domestic violence as it relates to men and women and intimate partner violence. We're going to continue that for today and kind of push that subject further. So again, Ms. Shirley, thank you for coming to be with me again.
You're welcome.
Now, let's recap from the last time we were talking about On the Wings of Love, and you were telling me about the foreign work and the domestic work that you do with women. Give me a little recap on that.
The foreign work, I've traveled to many other countries where I assisted in either taking medicines that the community needed, or I work with women and their children in the areas of any type of personal relationships or personal trauma that they have suffered. Mm-hmm. So that work is very dear to my heart. In the domestic work, I deal with women here in this country around domestic violence and sexual assault, or any kind of trauma that they have suffered, and give them many resources that they need. And the difference is, in foreign countries, they don't have a lot of resources, but here we have a lot of resources, but even in this 21st century, a lot of people are not aware of what's available for them to get some assistance.
Now, Dominion Family Services started in 1995, almost 18 years ago now, and we've been specifically working with families, men and women, to solve this issue of family violence. So last week, if you can remember some of the things that we talked about, we're going to kind of push the ball a little forward. We were talking about, from the Catechism of the Catholic Church, how men and women were created by God, and how they were supposed to be complementary to one another and get along. Now, one of the things that we talked about last week was how men and women, we lost our connection with God from a Christian point of view. And because of losing that connection, we lost our solidarity, we lost our peace, we lost our oneness, both with ourselves, with our partners, and with creation. And so we were pushing that idea forward. And we were discussing, well, what happened when we lost our connection with God, and how did it impact relationships? So, Ms. Shirley, can you start with domestic violence as we know it now?
Well, the disconnect when Adam fell into the sin and plunged us into sin, the disconnect that we are not in tune with ourselves of what we need and what we want and who we are, especially if we have been traumatized in our life as a child, as a teenager, or even as an adult. And we have the propensity to want to hold things in. We don't trust, and people in relationships, they get together and they're looking for a companion, but it's hard for a person to really give of themselves and have a trust factor going on.
So as we push the ball forward on this topic of domestic violence, we said last week, if you remember, that domestic violence was one person's need for ultimate power and control over their partner. Is that what we said, right?
That's what domestic violence is all about. It's about power and control. One has the need to control or have power over the other party for whatever their reasons are. We say because of a low self-esteem, but you would think that a person who, especially a man who's very successful or have a good job or doing whatever, that he wouldn't have low self-esteem problems. But there is something going on internally with him, some luggage that he brought into the relationship that causes him to think that he needs to have some type of control in the family. Because he may, in his own mind, think that he don't have no control in the marketplace, but at home he feels like I got the autonomy of control.
So what we're talking about is how men get the upper hand, and then how they maintain the upper hand, make everybody else bow to their wish, bow to their will, bow to their dream and idea.
Yes, but it doesn't happen like suddenly. It's a process that goes on. I tell women, I said, women had a propensity to always just, I say, tell everything. They tell all the good, the bad at the first date, or maybe at the second date. So him being who he is, want power and control, as we call him, being a predator, not knowing that he is a predator, because maybe he is looking for a good relationship or want to have a good relationship. But he's investigating how strong you are, or how weak you are, or how much control I can have over you. And it may take a month, 2 months, 3 months, it may even take a year. But something, like they say, somebody is coming up out the basement and we won't recognize who that person is. And they're going to want some power and control over that individual.
So when people get together, what we don't recognize is what kind of baggage people bring to the table.
Yes.
We don't look beyond what we see.
Yes.
Back into the back room to
Yes.
see what they're bringing, if they've been traumatized, if they've been betrayed, if they've been lied on,
Right.
If they feel as if they need to be so controlling so that they don't get hurt in anymore.
Yes.
We don't take any of that into consideration.
Yes.
We just want a relationship.
We want a relationship, and we women always go by our feelings. So he makes me feel good. I feel comfortable. I feel safe with him, because in the courting process, there's always good things. And you have to remember, in a marriage or a partnership, every day is not a bad day. Some days are really good. So it's like, then we come up with excuses if they kind of act out of character. He drinks. He only do this when he drinks. Or she only does this when he drinks. Because this is not just one-sided. There are predators of women also.
So everybody brings baggage to the table.
Everybody bringing some type of luggage. And in the groups, I tell women, I say, either he got an overnight bag or a suitcase, or you may have a trunk. But you got to find out what is he bringing into the relationship and what are you carrying into the relationship.
And when I talk to the men, I always tell them to look at the two sides that's before them. Now, look, anybody can get along with anybody who's smiling and laughing and always in a good mood, and nothing ever upsets them or overturns anything. Anybody can get along with a person like that.
Right.
But what about when the person gets upset and gets angry and gets emotional? Who is that person, and can you live with that person?
Can you live with that person? That's the right question. And in this, what I call the testing process, if you see the red flags, stop. If you see a red light, don't run through it and make an excuse for it. Oh, this is just he had a bad day or she had a bad day. You need to take note. Can I live with this? Would this be an ongoing thing? And I always try to find out now we all get angry. Anger is part of our makeup. But we have to learn to control our anger. Can this person control their anger? When they get angry, are they going to attack me physically, emotionally? What are they going to do? Are they going to withdraw themselves from me, control the money? What are the dynamics that's going to be happening in our relationship?
So when we talk about, and we'll talk about later, anger management, we're talking about a person that is able to manage their emotions.
Yes.
Sometimes people can't manage their emotions.
Yes.
And sometimes men are stunted. We only have a couple of emotions that we like to hang around.
Yes.
One being anger and one being self-gratification. So what happens is you have to ask yourself, if that person never changes, we're talking about their side two, their dark side, the side that always hangs in the closet. Yeah. If that person never changes, can I live with that person the rest of my life? And people generally don't ask themselves that question.
No, they do not. And they don't even consult God about those issues. And that's the problem that we're also having. If you want to talk about faith and God and having a relationship, I hear women, well, I'm praying and nothing happening and nothing changing. But are you having a conversation around this? Are you really addressing the real issues? I have a saying that we may argue about an apple on top of the table, but the problem is the pit bull that's underneath the table. What are we going to do with this pit bull? I don't want the dog in the house. You want the dog in the house. I don't want the dog around the children. He's a pit bull. So you're arguing about an apple, but never addressing the issue that's underneath the table. And even if it's about God, then somebody will say, well, then you're the man of the house. You need to do something, and that's intimidating to a man. So he'll retaliate, and then you got this what I call the tango going on. Or this waltz. What's going to happen? What is the solution? There's no peace in the house.
So when couples get together and they can't get along because they can't iron out their differences, they don't know how to negotiate, and they don't know how to compromise.
No.
They don't know how to do what's good for them. Like, for instance, I always get people who say, well, my mother and father did it this way, and this is the way I'm going to do it. And then she'll say, well, no, my mother and father, or my mother or my father did it this way.
Right.
And that's the way I want to do it. And they can't figure out that what they really need to do is to compromise and negotiate a settlement for their family, not try to relive their parents' family.
Right. And that's where you would get into the issue. When we go out and do presentations, we always say, well, what is battering? Battering is a learned behavior. So the behavior has been learned from your dad, from your grandpa. It's a family thing. I call it the ghost of the past. So you're adopting, and the ironic thing, Father Michael, is that people always say, I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to be like my mama. But they always end up in that situation where their dad was in and what their mother was in. The mother accepted abuse, or the dad was an abuser. They always, the people that comes through your program, they always say, well, my dad. But that's a hard thing to confess, because the thing that you hated, that's the thing you became, because you grew up in that.
So we really need to take a look at, as we present ourselves to someone to be a partner,
Right.
we need to really first look at ourselves and what baggage, what trauma, what betrayals
Yes.
we bring to the table
Yes.
that are going to impact the relationship.
Yes.
Wow.
It's a lot. It's really a lot. Relationships they're good and they're wonderful, but they're difficult, because you have to be able to share yourself, give of yourself. I tell women, at a certain age, it's not about falling in love. It's about growing to love someone. And then in that growth process, the love can stop growing. Because I ask women sometimes, when those women have been so traumatized in the relationship, I said, when did the love stop? When did you stop respecting this man? When did things start going downhill? And they'll take a moment and they'll say, and they'll give me a date and a time. And then I said, well, then, I'm going to ask a question that they say, can't nobody answer but you. Well, why you didn't make some changes? Or why did you stay? Or, and then most people say, well, in God's sight, I can't leave him.
Oh, so
the church say I can't leave him.
They blame God.
They blame God. And I tell women, so are you angry with God? But we won't get into that. But in the relationship, and then most of the women also says that they, because of the children. I grew up without my father. I don't want my children to grow up without their father, even in an abusive relationship.
Now, on the male side, what I have to tell the men is one of the first things that you have to consider and do in your life is you have to make room for this woman that you want to add to your life.
That's true.
You have to allow her access to your deepest, darkest secrets. If she's going to be your best friend and your closest confidant, then you have to tell her who you are.
Father Michael, that's kind of scary, because you're talking about trust now.
Well, but then didn't we just walk down the aisle and say, for better or for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, till death do us part?
This is true.
I mean, that's the person you said this to. So you have to open up and let this person see you, the real you, without all of the camouflage, without all of the trickery, without all of the smoke and mirrors, to see you. Because again, didn't you say, I love you? And isn't that what love is? Transparency?
This is true, but you also talk about that's the first phase of a relationship, what I call the honeymoon time. We are falling in love. We're growing to love each other. We really getting to know each other. But so in that process, I'm going to show you my best. And we getting married, the whole excitement. I'm going to spend the rest of my life. Oh, love is so grand. But 6 months down the line, you got issues. Your issues is coming up. And you have to deal with this. That's the scary part.
So this is when domestic violence comes up, because I start getting phone calls anywhere from a couple being together from 6 to 18 months. It's in that time frame
Yes.
that I start getting phone calls about trouble happening.
Yes.
So now let's talk about domestic violence. There are, first of all, domestic violence is an assault. Let's keep that clear.
Yes.
It's an assault committed against a spouse, former spouse, a person residing or having resided with the perpetrator, or a person that they have a child in common.
Correct.
So that's the definition of domestic violence.
Correct.
Now, when we talk about what is domestic violence, how do we explain that?
Like you said, it's an assault. It's either a hit, a slap, or throwing thing at somebody. Even if you throw a pencil, that's a felony.
Because you put a weapon,
It's
well,
a
you
weapon.
put something in motion, which
Right.
becomes a weapon.
Right. And if you hinder someone from calling 911,
So if you take their cell phone,
take the cell
if you
phone,
pull the phone off the wall,
pull the
if
phone
you
off
pull
the
the
wall.
cord out the wall, the cord out the wall, the
Yes.
little gray cord,
Yes.
that's a felony?
that's a felony. Because you cannot hinder no one from doing anything. You cannot even, I hear men say, "Oh, I did. I took her and I held her." So you restrained her. You cannot do that. You cannot put your hands on someone when y'all in an argument.
So most people don't really understand what intimate partner violence is, the definition of it, and how it works out. I mean,
Yes.
we know that if you throw somebody down the stairs, if you throw them out of a window, if you throw them over a piece of furniture, if you throw them up against the wall, okay, we got that. But the subtle ones,
Yes.
restraining,
Right.
hitting,
Yes.
holding,
Yes.
poking,
Yes.
pinching,
Yes.
pulling,
Spitting.
grabbing,
Yes.
and embracing so that the person really can't move.
Yes.
So all of that's included
Yes.
in domestic violence.
All that's included. And we won't even get into the name calling and the yelling and all the verbal abuse. But that physical things that get the police involved, they consider it very dangerous.
So if the general public really would begin to understand what domestic violence is, maybe we can kind of stop some of the domestic violence that's actually happening.
People have to become very conscious of what they say and what they do in a relationship. They must do that. Otherwise, it's against the law.
So if I create an atmosphere of danger in my home, if I threaten my partner, I can still be arrested for domestic violence.
Yes, yes, a threat, because you're saying I'm going to do some type of bodily harm to you, or some form or some fashion, and you can't do that. It's against the law.
And I think we don't understand all the many things. When I work with men, I try to give them this scenario, Ms. Shirley. I say, everything that you can do, most everything that you can do to your partner when you're laughing and making fun and having a good time, when one partner says stop, that's enough, and you continue to do those things,
Yes.
all those things now become against the law
It's against the law.
because you're violating someone's preference.
Correct. They're human rights.
And we don't know that.
No, we don't. We don't. I'll either go further to say, Father Michael, I've had women in my group, good Christian women, bad relationships, where they said, I remember one time we had a very strong discussion about if a woman didn't want to have sex with her husband and he forced her. We said, that's rape. That's against the law. And then they said, well, my vows say I'm supposed to give myself to my husband. Yes, you're supposed to give yourself, but if you said no and he proceeds,
That's rape.
that's rape, and it's against the law. The Christian world do not understand that.
You know, the flip side of that is, as I work with men, they don't realize that they have been raped. When you talk about a boy who's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, even 13, 14, 15, when you talk about that age range, men don't realize that that is rape. It's not them becoming a man.
The babysitter.
The babysitter,
Right.
The lady down the street,
Exactly.
the teacher, you know, all kinds of scenarios we've seen in the news, but that's rape.
That's rape.
And unfortunately, sometimes I have to be the one to tell the man, at 9 years old, you weren't having sex, you were being raped.
That's the violation of the innocence of a child, and it's against the law.
And we'd be surprised at how many people, at least men-wise, don't think of that action as rape.
Right.
They thought they got something.
And a lot of parents don't think that, oh, my son is coming into manhood. He's too young.
So manhood has nothing to do with sex.
No.
And it's about time we told somebody that.
Oh, well, that's another show for you, I guess.
All right, so let's push on. All right, so the programs. Now, in the time that we have left, Dominion Family Services offers a lot of different types of programming. Our Men at Work program covers our domestic violence intervention and our anger management groups. Now, our anger management groups are an interesting group. The dynamic is really good because in anger management, we don't simply just talk about anger. We talk about the full range of managing your emotions. And what most people don't know is that all of life has an emotional content to it. Everything you do has some type of feeling that goes along with it. For instance, can you imagine that when you're really, really thirsty and you get a nice cold drink of water, there's an emotional feeling that goes along with that. Same as when you eat a good plate of food, there's an emotional feeling that goes along with that. So in anger management classes, we try to get people to understand that they must not only simply manage their anger, but they must manage all of their emotions.
This is true.
Now, in our classes, we have to introduce men to the concept of all their emotions. You have the same thing in the women's group?
The same thing. A lot of times the women are very surprised when we bring in the feeling wheels and the emotion wheels. Emotions play a lot. One emotion leads to another, that leads to another, and then it's an anger motion behind that motion. And it's like a mushroom, and people don't realize that, and it affects a lot of areas of your life. A lot of people get angry. They may want to fight, or they may want to eat.
Right.
So it's a lot of things that goes along with just being angry.
This morning, I was coming from the north part of the county, and I was in a line of traffic, and the traffic was going slow. There was nowhere to go, and the person behind me kept blowing their horn. And finally, they drove around me, got in front of me, but could go no further than the car that was in front of me. Anger.
That's another emotion. He was being impatient.
And it was a she, unfortunately.
Oh, well, I have nothing to say.
Yes. So anger becomes a driving force sometimes in things that we do, and after we've done them, we say, well, why did I do that?
Yes, always in that afterwards. And it's like you hear so many times, and like, I didn't mean to do that. And I think with a lot of homicides, when it comes to relationships, the after fact, I really didn't mean to kill him. I really didn't mean to kill her. Yeah, but the anger level was so high, they lost control.
Now, we also offer a program called Life Coaching and Mentoring. What is that about?
Life coaching is 12 weeks, and you use this for that 17 to 25 to get them on track about what life is really about. In our society today, unfortunately, especially in the single-parent home, the woman, she may have to work, and the child is not seeing the father or whatever, and they want to be adults. So at 17, 18, 19, 20 to 25, they thinking they're being adults, and they go out and get into some trouble, whatever the trouble is. So the probation department will send them to Dominion for life coaching. And one of the things that we found out is it's very difficult for these young people to face the truth of the reality of real life. You got to be responsible, number one, for your actions. Number two, you got to have a plan for your life. Otherwise, you're going to constantly get into trouble.
One of the things that I consider when I work with the people in this particular group is that most of my 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, they really think they know what life is about.
Yes.
They have this playbook written in gold, and they go out into the world and they try to work their playbook. And it's not usually until they get later on in their late 20s, they figure out that their playbook is no good.
Yes.
They've gotten hurt. They've had a failed relationship. They lost a job. The way that they thought life should go, it didn't go that way.
Exactly.
And now they need someone to help them.
Yes.
So that's where we come in, where we try to help them build a framework
Yes.
by which then they can go on with life. We also have a substance abuse program. Now, our substance abuse program is working for those outpatient folks
Yes.
who were convicted of some type of crime, but there was a substance that was involved in the crime, be it alcohol or marijuana or something. And so we try to help them put their life back on track by getting them to remove the alcohol, remove the drug from their life. Now, we also have an assault of offenders program. Now, tell us about that.
The Assault of Offenders Program is those returning citizens who have been incarcerated, and the law says that sometimes for their crime that they have committed, they have to at least do 16 weeks of a program to talk about how to manage their anger, how to manage themselves. So what happens, those guys and women who are in prison, they find out that we have a program that when they come out, they can come to our program for 16 weeks.
And then lastly, we have a program that's called the Fatherhood Initiative. And that works with men who are aspiring to be fathers. And we help them think through what it means to be a father. All right, well, that's about all the time that we have today. I want to thank you again for being with me.
Oh, you're welcome.
And again, if you're in the southeastern Michigan area and you need help, give Dominion Family Services a call at 248-356-1700. Again, 248-356-1700. If you're not in our area, you can always look us up on our website, which is Dominion Family Services, all one word, dominionfamilyservices.org. And lastly, I'd like to also give a shout out to Verizon, who helps Dominion Family Services do the work that we do in the community, a work that is very, very important. Look, I hope to see you again next time on Things That Men Don't Tell. God bless you and heaven smile upon you.